The royal chamber trembled as explosions echoed through the crystalline walls of the Zephyrian palace. Queen Lirelei pressed her back against the ornate door, her silver skin shimmering with fear-induced bioluminescence. Her 3 hearts hammered in unison as she watched her husband of 2 years calmly brewing tea at their kitchen counter. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice carrying the melodic undertones of her species. "The rebellion has reached the inner sanctum. We need to evacuate. Now." Marcus Thompsonor, the man she believed to be an ordinary human diplomat, didn't even look up from his teacup. His movements were precise, measured, as if preparing for a casual afternoon rather than fleeing for their lives. "The Earl Grey needs exactly 4 minutes to steep properly," he said in his soft earth accent. "Even during an invasion." Another explosion rocked the palace, closer this time. Through the massive viewport that served as their bedroom wall, Lirelei could see the twisted metal hulks of Zephyrian warships falling like burning stars toward the planet's surface. The Krillian armada filled the space beyond thousands of organic vessels that looked more grown than built, their bioluminescent weapons charging for another bombardment. "Marcus." Lirelei's voice cracked with desperation. "The Krillians have broken through our defense grid. They'll be here in minutes. We have to." The palace door exploded inward. 6 Krillian warriors burst through the smoke and debris there, chitinous armor gleaming wet in the artificial light. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, their insectoid bodies rippling with combat modifications. Their leader, bearing the crimson markings of a battle commander, raised a plasma weapon that hummed with lethal energy. "Queen Lirelei of the Zephyrian Confederacy," the creature's voice buzzed through its translator. "By order of the Krillian hive mind, you are sentenced to absorption. Your genetic material will serve the collective." Lirelei's combat training kicked in. She reached for the photon blade at her hip, knowing it was futile. 6 Krillian warriors were more than a match for any single opponent, even a queen trained in the royal fighting arts. But Marcus continued stirring his tea. "Excuse me," he said politely, finally turning around. "But I'm afraid you're interrupting my wife's morning routine." The lead Krillian swiveled, its compound eyes toward the human. "Insignificant mammal, your species holds no value to the collective. You may observe as we claim your mate." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, then set down his teaspoon with a gentle clink. "You know," he said, rolling up the sleeves of his simple white shirt, "in 2 years of marriage, I've managed to keep Lirelei from asking too many questions about my past. She's wonderfully trusting that way." Lirelei watched in confusion as her husband walked calmly toward their bedroom closet. "Marcus, what are you but now that you've forced the issue?" Marcus continued, his voice carrying a strange new quality, harder, colder. "I suppose she'll have to learn the truth." He opened the closet door and reached behind their hanging clothes. When his hand emerged, it held something that made Lirelei's breath catch in her throat. It was a sword, but not just any sword. The blade seemed to drink in light itself, its surface showing not reflection, but an absence of void that hurt to look at directly. Strange symbols ran along its length, pulsing with an inner fire that spoke of technologies beyond current understanding. The crossguard bore markings she recognized from the most ancient Zephyrian texts, symbols that predated their civilization by millennia. "By the 7 moons," she whispered. That's impossible." The Krillian commander's posture shifted, compound eyes focusing intently on the weapon. "Unknown technology detected. Energy signature, ... anomalous. Classification. Impossible." Marcus hefted the sword with casual familiarity, as if it weighed nothing at all. "Lirelei, my dear, meet Voidrand. We've been partners for considerably longer than you and I have been married." "Partners?" Oh, the word came out as barely a breath. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him. It wasn't the gentle, somewhat befuddled expression of the diplomat she'd married. This smile held depths she'd never seen, ancient depths, like staring into the space between stars. "I'm not exactly the man you think I am." The lead Krillian raised its weapon, primitive blade against plasma technology. "Oh. Your delusion will not," Marcus moved. One moment he stood by the closet, The next, he was behind the lead warrior. The Krillian's head hit the floor with a wet thud, its body following a heartbeat later. The impossible blade hadn't so much cut through the creature's armor as simply erased it. The remaining 5 Krillians opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts that could melt through starship holes streaked toward the human diplomat who collected antique books and made terrible jokes at dinner parties. Lyrilla screamed her husband's name. Marcus danced between the energy beams, like they were standing still. His movements defied physics as she understood it. He twisted in midair, spun through spaces too narrow for a human body, and somehow arrived exactly where he needed to be to avoid each lethal projectile. The sword sang as it moved, a sound like reality tearing at the seams. 2 more Krillians fell, their weapons cleaved in half, along with their wielders. Retreat, buzzed the remaining warriors, unknown hostile. Ekla's Amiga, threat. But Marcus was already among them. The last 3 died before they could take a single step toward the ruined doorway. Their bodies collapsed in perfect silence, armor, and flesh parting like water before that impossible blade in the sudden quiet. Marcus straightened his shirt collar and returned to his tea. The sword vanished, not sheathed, not set aside, but simply gone, as if it had never existed. "I'm afraid it's gone cold," he said apologetically, testing the temperature with his fingertip.
Shall I make a fresh pot?
Lyrilla stared at her husband's oar. The being wearing her husband's face, her world tilted on its axis. The gentle man who helped her with diplomatic correspondence and always remembered to water her collection of earth roses had just killed 6 elite Krillian warriors with casual efficiency. "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus looked up from his teacup, and for just a moment, she caught a glimpse of something vast and terrible behind his brown eyes. Something that had seen the birth and death of galaxies. "Would you believe me if I said I'm still the man who loves you?" Before she could answer, the communicator on their nightstand erupted with frantic voices. Admiral Kekstar's distinctive bark cut through the chaos. "My queen. The Krillian flagship is moving toward the palace. They're charging some kind of weapon we've never seen before. The energy readings are, by the ancestors, it's planet killer class." Through their viewport, a massive shadow fell across the city. The Krillian hive ship dominated the sky, a living mountain of chitin and biometal stretching from horizon to horizon. Weapon ports along its underbelly began to glow with malevolent light. "They're going to crack the planet open," Lyrilla breathed. Marcus sighed and set down his teacup. "I was really hoping it wouldn't come to this." "Come to what?" Walked to the viewport and pressed his palm against the crystal surface. Outside, the great hive ship's weapons reached critical charge. In moments, they would unleash enough energy to split Zephyria like an egg, to revealing why the Terran diplomatic corps was so eager to assign a junior attach to the Zephyrian court 2 years ago. The weapon ports flared on. Marcus whispered a single word in a language that predated the formation of stars. The hive-ship ... stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply frozen in space, as if time itself had been paused. Its weapon ports still glowed, but the energy within them no longer moved. The massive vessel hung in the sky like a grotesque sculpture. Marcus Lyrilla's voice was barely audible. "What did you do?" He turned back to her, and this time she could see the weight of eons in his gaze. "I bought us some time to talk, about 12 hours, by my calculation, before the temporal lock degrades." "Temporal lock? That's impossible. The technology doesn't exist. It does where I come from." "And where?" she asked, though part of her feared the answer. "Is that?" Marcus smiled sadly. "That, my dear queen, is a very long story." Chapter 2. The Guardian's Tale. "Sit down," Marcus said gently, gesturing to their morning chairs by the viewport. "This may take a while." Lyrilla remained standing, every muscle tense. "My people are dying out there." "No, they're not. The temporal field extends to roughly 1,000 kilometers around the hive ship. Every Krillian in that radius is currently experiencing time at approximately 1/1,000,000th normal speed. From their perspective, this conversation will last about 3 microseconds. She stared at him. "You're speaking as if manipulating time is ... routine. For my people it was. Past tense. Marcus moved to the viewport, his reflection ghost-like against the backdrop of the frozen invasion fleet. Please, Lirale, sit. I've kept this secret for 2 years because I love you too much to burden you with it, but circumstances have rather forced my hand. Reluctantly, she settled into her chair, the one he'd bought her for their first anniversary because he'd noticed she always curled her legs under her when she read. Such a small, thoughtful gesture. How could the same man have just frozen time itself? I told you I was from Earth, Marcus began. That much was true. Terra, as we called it in the old tongue. But I never mentioned when I was from. When? About 14 billion years ago, give or take a few million. The number hung in the air. Like a physical weight, Lirale felt her understanding of reality crack around the edges. That's impossible. The universe isn't that old. The current universe isn't. No. This is actually the 7th iteration by my count. I've lived through the heat, death, and rebirth of existence 6 times now. Marcus turned to face her, and she could see the immeasurable weariness in his features. Each cycle, entropy wins. The stars burn out, black holes evaporate, and everything slides into cold, perfect equilibrium. Then, somehow, it all begins again. You're saying you're 14 billion years old, give or take. Time gets a bit fluid when you exist outside normal space-time. The exact number isn't really important. Lirale's 3 hearts hammered in different rhythms. What are you? The last of my kind. We called ourselves the Guardians, though that was more of a responsibility than a species name. We evolved on the 3rd planet of an unremarkable yellow star in what you'd now call the Andromeda Galaxy. This was back when galaxies were much smaller, more chaotic. The universe was younger. Then more ... malleable. Marcus began pacing, his movements betraying none of the supernatural grace she'd witnessed during the fight. He was just her husband again, the man who got nervous when explaining complex topics. My people discovered early that consciousness, true consciousness, was rarer than we'd thought. In a universe of trillions of stars, only a handful of species would ever develop the capacity for genuine self-awareness, for growth, for choosing their own destiny. We found ourselves in the position of being one of the first sapient species in this local cluster, yes. And we made a choice that defined the next 13 billion years of my existence. Marcus stopped pacing and met her eyes. We chose to guard the others. To protect the development of consciousness wherever it arose, to ensure that younger species had the chance to grow, to learn, to become more than they were. Lirale thought of the Zephyrian creation myths, the ancient stories of mysterious benefactors who'd helped her people survive the volcanic epoch that should have ended their civilization. The silent protectors from our oldest legends. Among others, tried to stay invisible, to guide without controlling. But sometimes, he gestured toward the frozen hive ship. Sometimes direct intervention was necessary. How many of you were there? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. At our peak, perhaps 1 million. We lived on worlds between the stars, in dimensions slightly adjacent to normal space. We could step outside time when necessary, manipulate matter and energy on a quantum level, travel anywhere in the cosmos instantly. We were as close to gods as any mortal species had ever become. What happened to them? The pain that crossed? Marcus's features was so raw that Lirale instinctively reached toward him. He caught her hand, his skin as familiar and warm as always. The 4th universe died badly. Usually, heat death as gradual stars burn out, galaxies drift apart, everything slowly fades to black. But something went wrong in the 4th cycle. Reality began, unraveling, not just dying, but actually ceasing to exist, layer by layer. His grip tightened on her hand. The Guardians made a choice. They used their combined power to hold existence together long enough for the universe to stabilize and begin its next cycle. It cost them everything. Their bodies, their consciousness. Their very souls were burned up as fuel to keep reality from collapsing into absolute nothingness. But you survived. Someone had to. They made sure I was elsewhere when they made their sacrifice. Pushed me into a dimensional fold outside normal space-time. I experienced their deaths as a kind of ... echo. 1 million lights going out simultaneously. Marcus's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've been alone ever since. Lirelei felt tears forming in her eyes. For 10 billion years, I tried to honor their sacrifice. Continued the work, watching over developing species, occasionally intervening. When extinction-level threats arose, I saved the Altarians from the solar plague, guided the Nexus Collective through their first encounter with hostile artificial intelligence, helped the vegan empire survive their civil war. But you never revealed yourself. Marcus shook his head. The loneliness was ... indescribable, to be the only one of your kind. To carry memories of civilizations that died before the current universe was born. To watch species rise and fall like waves on a beach. I began to wonder if I was going insane. The isolation was finally breaking my mind. What changed? He smiled then, the first genuine expression she'd seen since the attack began. I met a young Zephyrian diplomat at a trade conference on Kepler Station. She was arguing passionately for refugee rights with a table full of species who considered her people barely civilized. She was brilliant, fierce, completely unafraid to stand up for what she believed in. You fell in love with an alien queen? I fell in love with you, Marcus corrected. The fact that you happen to be royalty was actually rather inconvenient. You know how difficult it is to court someone who has 17 different protocols? For how suitors are supposed to behave? Despite everything, Lirelei laughed. You ignored most of them. I figured my age gave me the right to be a little eccentric. Marcus grew serious again. I thought I could have a normal life for once. Just be a man who loved a woman. I created the Marcus Thompson identity, got myself assigned to your court, and told myself I could put the guardian responsibilities aside for a few decades. But you couldn't. The Krillians changed everything. They're not just another aggressive, a species looking to expand territory, or something else entirely. Through the viewport, the frozen hive ship loomed like a tumor against the sky. Even motionless, it radiated malevolence. What are they? Marcus stood and walked to their bedroom wall. He pressed his palm against what looked like ordinary crystal. And suddenly, the surface came alive with images, star charts, bio-readings, data streams, and languages she couldn't read. I've been tracking them for 3,000 years, ever since they first appeared in the outer spiral. They're not from this universe. The words hit Lirelei like a physical blow. What do you mean? Remember how I mentioned the universe has died and been reborn multiple times? Usually, when a cycle ends, everything is reset. Matter, energy, consciousness, all of it gets recycled into the new iteration. But sometimes, things slip through the cracks. The wall display shifted, showing a schematic of something that hurt to look at directly, a twisted space where normal geometry seemed to fold in on itself. The Krillians are refugees from the 6th universe. They found a way to survive the heat death by changing themselves, abandoning individuality, becoming a collective consciousness that could exist in the spaces between realities. But the process corrupted them. Corrupted how? They feed on consciousness itself, on bodies, not energy. They consume the spark of self-awareness that makes a being truly alive. Every species they absorb strengthens them and adds to their collective knowledge. Lirelei thought of the millions of worlds that had gone silent in the past century. Planets where thriving civilizations had simply ... stopped. The silent zones. Feeding grounds. The Krillians don't destroy planets, they harvest them, strip away every trace of individual thought, and leave behind empty husks that can still perform basic functions, but are no longer truly alive. You've been fighting them for 3,000 years? Marcus nodded grimly. Trying to, but I'm just one being, and they're a collective consciousness with the combined knowledge of an entire universe. Every time they consume a species, they become smarter, stronger, more adaptable. I've managed to save perhaps 1 world in 10. Why didn't you ask for help? From whom? Most species aren't even aware the Krillians exist until it's too late. And those that are. Well, would you believe a story about 14-billion-year-old guardians and universe-eating parasites from beyond reality? Lirelei was quiet for a moment, processing everything she'd learned. Her husband, the man who made her laugh, who held her during thunderstorms, who had learned to cook Zephyrian cuisine because it made her homesick, was the last survivor of a species that had literally held reality together. "The sword?" she said finally. "Voidrend? What is it?" Marcus's expression grew distant. "A guardian weapon. Forged from the crystallized essence of collapsed stars and tempered in the fires that burn between dimensions. It doesn't cut through matter so much as convince reality that the target was never there to begin with. Is it the only one?" "Only one left. When my people sacrificed themselves, all their weapons and tools were consumed in the process. Somehow, Voidrend survived. I think it's bonded to me on a quantum-level part of my consciousness given physical form." Lirelei stood and walked to him, placing her hand over his heart. "You've been carrying all of this alone? Thought I could protect you without involving you. Handle the Krillian threat quietly, behind the scenes, while living a normal life with the woman I love." Marcus covered her hand with his own. "I was arrogant. The Krillians aren't just another enemy there. An extinction-level threat to all consciousness in this universe. And they finally deck. I need to target you directly. Why us? The Zephyrian Confederacy is barely 2 centuries old. We're nothing compared to the galactic powers. That's exactly why they want you. Young species are easier to absorb, less developed defenses, fewer ingrained habits of thought. But more importantly," Marcus paused, as if weighing his words carefully, "you're important to me. The Krillians may be alien, but they understand leverage." The implications hit her like a cold wave. "They know who you are. They've known for some time, I think. The attack on your palace wasn't random. It was designed to force me into the open, to make me reveal my true nature. They want to study me, to understand how Guardian technology works, so they can find a way to kill you, or worse. If they could absorb my consciousness, add 14 billion years of memories and knowledge to their collective ... Marcus shuddered. They would become unstoppable, not just in this universe, but in whatever comes after, through the viewport. The frozen hive ship seemed to pulse with malevolent patience. Lirelei could almost feel the thousands of alien minds within it, suspended in time but still planning, still hungry.
"How long do we have?"
"The temporal lock will hold for about 11 more hours. After that, they'll realize what happened and adapt their tactics accordingly." "Can you do it again? Freeze them permanently?" Marcus shook his head. "Guardian technology has limits. The larger the effect, the more it costs. Stopping a dreadnought class hive ship for 12 hours will leave me weakened for days. If I tried to make it permanent, it would probably kill me. Then we need a different plan. We need to evacuate your people and find a way to destroy the Krillian fleet before they can call for reinforcements." Lirelei looked at the massive vessel hanging in the sky. "How do you destroy something that size?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of terrible certainty. "There is a way, but it would mean revealing not just my identity, but the existence of Guardian technology to the entire galaxy. The secret I've kept for 14 billion years would be over? Would that be so bad? Would change everything? Once the galaxy knows that Guardian technology exists, every species will want it. Wars will be fought over it. Empires will rise and fall trying to control it. The careful balance I've maintained for eons will collapse." Lirelei thought of her people, of the billions of Zephyrians who trusted her to protect them. "What's the alternative? The Krillians win. They absorb your people, then use your world as a staging ground to consume the rest of the galaxy. Within a century, every conscious being in the local galactic cluster would be dead or worse. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Do it," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Marcus smiled sadly. "I was hoping you'd say that, dreading it at the same time." He walked to their communications console and began entering commands with practiced ease, sending a message to every major power in the galaxy. Terran Federation, the Altarian Republic, the Vegan Empire, the Nexus Collective, everyone. Kind of message, an introduction, and a call to arms. Chapter 3. The gathering storm. The message Marcus sent rippled across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, reaching the capital worlds of every major civilization within hours. Its contents were simple and devastating. Asterisk to the conscious beings of the galaxy. My name is Marcus Thompson, a survivor of the species you know as the Silent Protectors. The Krillian Collective represents an extinctional-level threat to all sapient life. I am formally requesting military assistance from all capable species. Coordinates attached. Come prepared for war. Asterisk, asterisk, time remaining. 10 hours. 23 minutes. Asterisk, the response was immediate and chaotic. Within minutes, Zephyrian space was filled with incoming transmission requests. Admiral Kekstar's gravelly voice cut through the chatter on the emergency channel. My queen, I have 17 different species demanding to speak with you directly. The Terran Federation is screaming about unauthorized use of their diplomatic codes. The Altarians are claiming this is some kind of elaborate hoax. And the vegans. Well, the vegans are asking if they can interview your husband for their historical archives. Lirale stood beside Marcus in the Palace Communications Center, watching displays light up with incoming ships. The first to arrive were the Fast-Tac Act, vessels Terran destroyers dropping out of hyperspace with weapons already charged, their hulls scarred from recent battles with Krillian scout forces. Put Admiral Chen through, Marcus said calmly. The main screen flickered to life, showing a stern-faced human woman with silver hair and the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades fighting in the void. Behind her, the bridge of the TFS, defiant, buzzed with activity. Marcus Thompson, Admiral Chen's voice, carried a mixture of anger and disbelief. Do you have any idea what kind of chaos you've just caused? Half the galaxy thinks this is an elaborate prank, and the other half is mobilizing their entire fleets based on a fairy tale. Hello, Sarah, Marcus replied with genuine warmth. You're looking well. How's retirement treating you? Chen's expression shifted to confusion. How do you... We've never met, haven't we? Kepler Station 15 years ago. You were a lieutenant. Commander then, dealing with a Nexus pirate raid. I was the one who provided the intelligence that let you find their base. The Admiral's eyes widened. The anonymous tip. That was you? Among other things. I've been keeping an eye on humanity's expansion into space. Your species shows a remarkable promise. Prove it, Chen said bluntly. Prove you're what you claim. To be? Marcus gestured to the viewport, where the massive Krillian hive ship still hung motionless in the sky.
What do you think that is?
Impossible technology. Some kind of stasis field that our best scientists can't even begin to explain. Guardian technology. Specifically, a localized temporal distortion field. The Krillians in that ship are experiencing time at roughly 1/1,000,000th normal speed, and you did that. Chen stared at the frozen hive ship for a long moment. My God, the legends are true. The legends are a pale shadow of the truth, but we don't have time for a full history lesson. Marcus pulled up a tactical display showing the approaching fleet movements. The Krillians aren't just invading Zephyrian space, they're using this attack as a test to see how I'll respond, what technology I'll reveal, how the galaxy will react to learning about the Guardians. A test for what? For their real offensive? What you see here is one hive ship. According to my long-range sensors, there are over 1,000 more massing just outside the galactic rim. The blood drained from Chen's face. 1,000 ships that size, each carrying approximately 50 million Krillian warriors and enough bioweapons to crack a planet's crust. That's not the worst part. Marcus's voice grew grim. Every world they've consumed has added to their collective knowledge. They know our tactics, our technologies, our weaknesses. They've been studying us for centuries, preparing for this moment. Before Chen could respond, another voice cut through, the channel melodious and ancient. Speaking in the flowing tones of the Altarian Republic, Guardian Marcus said, High Counselor Thalnus, her holographic form appearing beside Chen's image. If you are truly what you claim, then you know of the promise. Marcus inclined his head respectfully. The sixth compact, sealed with the blood of 3 peoples when your civilization faced the plague of mines. Yes, I remember. Thalnus, eyes compound orbs that shifted through the spectrum settled. into a deep blue that indicated profound respect. Then you also remember the debt we owe. There are no debts between friends, High Counselor. Nevertheless, the Altarian Republic places its entire fleet at your disposal. More voices joined the conference. Gruff Draconian commanders, crystalline Nexus intelligences, even the rarely heard whispers of the enigmatic Voidwalkers. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves united by the revelation that the silent protectors were real and that one still lived. This is unprecedented, Admiral Chen muttered, receiving orders from Earth 2. Place our entire Outer Rim fleet under your command. That's 300 ships, Guardian. I'm honored by the trust, Marcus said, but I need you all to understand something. The technology I'm about to use, the weapons I'll deploy, they will change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. There's no going back from this. Lirelei stepped forward, her royal bearing evident even in the crisis. Then we go forward together, as equals. The next few hours were a blur of tactical planning and fleet coordination. Ships continued to arrive. From across the galaxy, not just military vessels, but cargo haulers, passenger liners, even civilian craft volunteering to help with evacuation efforts. The space around Zephyria became a three-dimensional maze of vessels from dozens of different species, all united by the threat hanging motionless above the planet. Marcus worked tirelessly, coordinating with fleet commanders, sharing tactical data, and slowly revealing the true scope of Guardian technology. He showed them sensor readings that penetrated Krillian bioarmor, weapon frequencies that could disrupt their neural networks, and shielding configurations that might withstand their reality warping attacks. The key, he explained, to a gathering of senior officers from multiple species is that the Krillians aren't just a military force. They're a collective consciousness that exists partially outside normal space-time. Traditional weapons affect their bodies, but not their true essence. So how do we kill them? Asked General Vorthan of the Draconian Defense Force, his scaled features twisted with predatory anticipation. We don't kill them, Marcus replied. We sever their connection to the collective, force them back into individual consciousness. For a being that's existed as part of a hive mind for millions of years, the shock of sudden isolation can be ... terminal. And you have a weapon that can do this? Marcus's hand moved unconsciously to where Voidrend would appear if summoned. I have several options, but they all require getting close to the hive ship's central nexus. And that means fighting through 50 million hostile aliens in an enclosed space. Not alone, said Admiral Chen firmly. The combined fleets of 17 species are at your back, Guardian. We'll get you to that nexus. The casualties will be enormous. The casualties of failure will be worse. This from High Counselor. Thalness. We have run probability analysis. If the Krillians succeed here, galactic civilization has perhaps 50 years before total extinction. Marcus looked around at the assembled officers' beings of a dozen different species. Former enemies now standing shoulder to shoulder against a common threat. You understand that revealing Guardian technology will fundamentally alter galactic politics. Some of you will try to claim or copy this technology. Wars will be fought over it. Then we'll deal with those wars when they come, Chen said. Right now, we have a more immediate problem. A new voice cut through the discussion, cold, mechanical, utterly without emotion. Guardian Marcus, this is Prime Node 7 of the Synthetic Collective. We have been monitoring your communications. The assembled officers tensed. The Synthetic Collective was a faction of artificial intelligences that had broken away from their organic creators centuries ago. Their relationship with the rest of the galaxy was complicated. Prime Node 7, Marcus replied carefully. I wasn't aware the Collective took interest in organic affairs. We do not, typically. However, our analysis indicates that Krillian absorption techniques would be effective against synthetic consciousness as well. This threat encompasses all sapient beings, organic and artificial alike. Are you offering assistance? But we are offering to analyze Krillian technology and provide tactical recommendations. In exchange, we request access to Guardian computational methods. After the battle, acceptable, Marcus turned to Lirelei, who had been quietly observing the interplay of galactic politics. "What do you think, my queen? Ready to make history?" She looked out at the gathered fleets, hundreds of ships representing the combined military might of known civilization. "I think," she said slowly, "that this is what the Guardians would have wanted. Not one being carrying the burden alone, but all conscious life standing together." "The temporal lock has 2 hours left," Marcus announced. To the assembled fleet commanders. Final preparations. This is going to get very ugly very quickly. As the officers dispersed to their ships, Lirelei caught Marcus's arm. "There's something you haven't told them, isn't there?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "The Krillians aren't here by accident. They've been planning this specific attack for decades, maybe centuries. They know exactly how I'll respond, what technology I'll use, how the Allied fleets will coordinate. You think it's a trap? I know it's a trap. Question is whether it's a trap we can survive long enough to turn back on them. If we can't," Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, "then at least we'll go down fighting together. After 14 billion years of solitude, I can't think of a better way to end the story." Through the viewport, the first hour of the temporal lock expired. The massive hive ship remained frozen. But subtle changes were beginning to appear, flickering lights along its hull, minor variations in its bioelectric field. The Krillians were starting to adapt, even to Guardian technology. 1 more hour. 1 hour to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of every conscious being in the galaxy. The greatest challenge of Marcus's impossibly long existence was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Battle for Consciousness, the Temporal Lock. Failed at exactly 1437 Galactic Standard Time. The massive Krillian hive ship shuddered back to full awareness with a sound like reality tearing. Its bioluminescent weapon ports, which had been frozen mid-charge, completed their deadly sequence in seconds. But instead of the helpless planet they expected to find below them, the Krillians discovered something that defied their collective understanding. Nearly 800 warships from 17 different species hung in perfect formation around their vessel. The combined fleet represented the largest military cooperation in galactic history, and every weapon was trained on the hive ship. "This is Guardian Marcus Thompson," came the broadcast across all frequencies. "You have 10 seconds. To withdraw from Zephyrian space or face the combined might of the Galactic Alliance." The response was immediate and chilling. The hive ship's surface rippled like liquid flesh, and when it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, not through communicators, but directly into the minds of every conscious being within 1,000 kilometers. Guardian, last child of a dead species, we have waited so long to meet you. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship. Lirelei beside him, surrounded by holographic displays showing the tactical situation. Expression remained calm, but Lirelei could see the tension in his shoulders. "You've made a mistake," Marcus replied, his voice carrying across the fleet communications. "You've revealed yourselves too early, shown your hand before you were ready. Have we, or have you fallen into a trap, 14 billion years in the making?" The hive ship's hull began to split open like a flowering nightmare. What emerged defied description, not individual craft, but living extensions of the ship itself, each one the size of a Terran battlecruiser but moving with organic fluidity. They poured out in their thousands, a dark cloud of biomechanical horror spreading across space. "All ships, weapons free." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the com channels. "Engage at will." The battle began. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a miniature star going nova. The Allied fleet's weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion torpedoes struck the Krillian bioships with devastating effect. Dozens of the alien craft were vaporized in the opening seconds, but for every one destroyed, 2 more emerged from the hive ship's seemingly endless interior. Their regeneration rate is incredible, reported Captain Isis of the Altarian vessel Mindfire. "They're rebuilding faster than we can damage them." Marcus watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Allied fleet was powerful, but the Krillians were adapting to their weapons in real time. Each successive wave of bioships showed increased resistance to the attacks that had destroyed their predecessors. "They're learning," he muttered. "Every ship we destroy, they analyze the weapon that killed it and develop countermeasures." Precisely, the hive mind's voice echoed in their thoughts. Asterisk. "We have absorbed the knowledge of 1,000,000 species. Your tactics, your technologies, your strategies all are known to USA squadron of Terran destroyers broke formation, trying to exploit what looked like a gap in the Krillian defenses. The bioships moved to intercept them with impossible coordination. Their weapons, living things that writhed and pulsed, tearing through military-grade shielding like it was paper. The destroyer TFS Valiant died in silence, its hull cracking open to vent atmosphere and crew into the void. "We're not winning this," Admiral Chen reported grimly. "They adapt too quickly. We need a new approach." Marcus closed his eyes, reaching into memories that spanned eons. In all his years as a Guardian, he had never faced an enemy quite like this. The Krillians weren't just technologically advanced, they were evolution itself, perfected and weaponized. Guardian Liralay's voice was soft, meant only for him, the sword. "Isn't it time? Not yet. If I reveal Voidren too early, they'll have time to develop countermeasures. I need to get closer." "How much closer?" Marcus studied the tactical display, calculating distances and probabilities. Inside the hive ship, at the central nexus where their collective consciousness originates, that's suicide. There are 50 million Krillians in there. 47 million? 200,000? Give or take a few 100,000? Marcus's casual precision was chilling. "But you're right, it's almost certainly suicide." Before Lirilay could respond, the battle took a dramatic turn. The synthetic collective's contribution to the Alliancer, single ship that looked more like a geometric theorem than a vessel, suddenly accelerated toward the hive ship at impossible speed. "Prime Node 7, what are you doing?" Admiral Chen demanded. The artificial intelligence's response was characteristically direct, implementing optimal solution. "This unit will serve as distraction while Guardian infiltrates target." The synthetic ship struck the hive ship's hull with kinetic force equivalent to a small asteroid impact. The alien vessel's bioarmor cracked and bled, exposing the twisted internal structure beneath. But instead of bouncing off or being destroyed, the synthetic ship began to burrow into the wound it had created. "Fascinating," the hive mind mused. Asterisk artificial consciousness. "We have encountered this before, never in such pure form. We will enjoy adding your logic to our collective asterisk." "Now," Marcus said to Liralay, "tell the fleet to concentrate all firepower on that breach. Keep it open for as long as possible." "Marcus, you can't. I love you," he said simply. "In 14 billion years of existence, you are the only thing that has ever made me truly happy. Remember that." Before she could stop him, Marcus stepped into the shuttle bay's launch tube. But instead of getting into a ship, he simply stepped out into space. Liralay rushed to the viewport and watched in amazement as her husband walked through the vacuum as if it were solid ground. He moved with purpose toward the breach in the hive ship's hull, space seeming to bend around him to provide air and pressure. "Impressive," the hive mind acknowledged. "But futile. You cannot face the collective alone. Watch me," Marcus replied. He reached the breach as the combined fleet's weapons fire widened it into a chasm. The synthetic ship had carved a tunnel deep into the hive ship's interior, its hull glowing white-hot from the friction of its passage. Marcus followed the tunnel in. The interior of the hive ship was a nightmare of organic architecture. Walls that pulsed like living tissue, floors that shifted and moved beneath his feet. And everywhere the sound of the collectiva. It's a constant whisper of millions of minds thinking in perfect unison. Krillian warriors emerged from the walls themselves, their chitinous forms blending seamlessly with the ship's structure until they attacked. Marcus moved among them like a dancer, his enhanced reflexes letting him dodge their plasma weapons while he conserved his energy for the real battle ahead. But there were so many of them. For every corridor he cleared, 2 more filled with enemies. They flowed toward him in endless waves, and slowly, inexorably, they began to wear him down. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, spinning him around. Claws raked across his back, drawing blood that glowed faintly in the bioluminescent light. Asterisk you? Are beginning to understand. Asterisk, the hive mind observed. Asterisk, no individual, neither how powerful, can stand against the collective. Your guardians learned this lesson. When they chose to die rather than face us, Asterisk Marcus stopped in the middle of a vast chamber surrounded by thousands of Krillian warriors. You're wrong about my people. They didn't die because they feared you. They died to save something more important than themselves. Asterisk, and what was that? Asterisk, the future. Marcus raised his hand, and Voidren materialized in his grip. The possibility that someday conscious beings would choose to stand together instead of alone. The sword sang as he moved, its impossible edge parting reality itself. Krillian warriors died by the dozens, their molecular structure simply ceasing to exist where the blade touched them. But more kept coming, always more. Marcus fought his way deeper into the ship, following the psychic emanations that led toward the collective's core. The resistance grew stronger with each level he descended, till he was facing not just individual warriors but the focused attention of the entire hive mind. The walls themselves began to attack him, tendrils of living metal lashing out with enough force to crush a normal being. Marcus danced between them, but he was slowing down. 14 billion years of existence couldn't protect him from simple physics. He was one being against millions. The math was inexorable. Surrender, the hive mind whispered. Asterisk, join us willingly, and we will make your absorption painless. Fight, and we will tear your consciousness apart layer by layer until nothing remains but screaming. Asterisk, counteroffer. Marcus gasped, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Go back to whatever dark corner of reality you crawled out of, and I'll let some of you live, musing. But ultimately the hive mind's voice cut off abruptly. Through the ship's organic walls, Marcus could feel something new, a tremor of uncertainty rippling through the collective consciousness. Outside, the battle had taken an unexpected turn. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the broadcast. The Guardian has been inside that thing for 20 minutes. If we're going to help him, it has to be now. The hole is too thick, reported Captain Thesis. Our weapons can't penetrate deep. Enough to reach the core, then we get closer. Chen's voice carried grim determination. All ships, ramming speed, we're going to crack this thing open like an egg. What followed was the most desperate maneuver in military history. 800 ships from 17 species, many of them former enemies, coordinated their movements with impossible precision. They formed a massive spearhead with the heaviest dreadnoughts at the point. Using their combined mass and velocity as a weapon, the Krillian bioships tried to intercept them. But there were too many allied vessels attacking from too many angles. The organic defenders were swept aside like debris. The spearhead struck the hive ships. With the force of a small moon, the massive vessel's bioarmor shattered, revealing the twisted maze of passages within. Atmosphere vented in great gouts of alien gas, and the ship's death scream echoed across all frequencies. But the hive ship was dying slowly. It wasn't going to die alone. If we cannot have the Guardian, the collective decided, asterisk, then no one will. Asterisk, the ship began to glow from within, its bionuclear core building toward critical mass. In minutes, it would explode with enough force to vaporize everything within a light second. Including the Allied fleet and the planet below, Marcus felt the change immediately. The Krillian warriors around him suddenly stopped attacking, their attention focused inward as they prepared for their final gambit. He had one chance. Voidren hummed in his grip as he reached out, with senses that transcended normal space-time. The hive ship's core was 3 levels below him. It's protected by layers of bioarmor that would take precious minutes to cut through, minutes he didn't have. Instead, Marcus did something that would have been impossible for any being other than a Guardian. He stepped outside of normal reality. The universe around him shifted, colors bleeding into spectrums that had no names, time flowing in directions that didn't exist. In this space between dimensions, he could move from any point to any other. Point without crossing the distance. Between them, he emerged in the hive ship's core chamber. The sight that greeted him was beyond description. The collective's central nexus was a writhing mass of neural tissue the size of a city block, pulsing with the combined thoughts of 50 million minds. Tendrils of bioelectric energy connected it to every part of the ship, carrying commands and information at the speed of thought at its center. Glowing with malevolent intelligence was the core consciousness, the first Krillian to survive their universe's death. The one who had led his species into their terrible transformation. Guardian. It spoke, its voice no longer a chorus but a single, ancient intelligence. Asterisk, you are too late. In 30 seconds. This vessel will achieve critical mass. Your alliance will die. Your queen will die. And with them any hope of stopping the collective. Asterisk. Marcus raised Voidrend. Its blade drinking in the chambers twisted. Light. You're forgetting something. Asterisk. And what is that? Asterisk. I'm not here to stop the explosion. Marcus smiled, and for the first time in billions of years, it was the smile of a true guardian, ancient, patient, and absolutely implacable. I'm here to redirect it. He drove the sword deep into the nexus. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Voidrend's reality-warping properties didn't just cut through the collective's neural tissue, they severed the connections that held the hive mind together. 50 million individual consciousnesses suddenly ripped away from the collective that had sustained them for eons, experienced the shock of absolute isolation. Most of them died instantly, their minds unable to cope with the trauma of individuality. But the explosion Marcus had been expecting didn't come. Instead, the ship's bionuclear core began to fold in on itself, its energy not dissipating outward, but collapsing into a single, impossibly dense point. Asterisk, what have you done? The core consciousness screamed. I've given you exactly what you wanted, Marcus replied. Absorption. But not of other minds, of your own energy, compressed into a singularity that will drag this entire ship out of normal space-time. The chamber began to distort around them as the artificial black hole gained mass and momentum. Hull groaned and buckled, sections of it already disappearing into the growing void. Asterisk, you will die too. The core consciousness realized, the singularity will consume you as well. Probably. Marcus pulled Voidrend free from the collapsing nexus. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. He stepped back into the space between dimensions, feeling reality strain around him as the artificial black hole warped the local space-time continuum. Moving through folded space while a singularity was forming nearby was beyond dangerous. It was theoretically impossible. But Marcus had been doing impossible things for 14 billion years. He emerged on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship. Just as the hive ship completed its collapse into the artificial black hole, the massive vessel folded in on itself like origami in reverse, its twisted bulk disappearing into a point of darkness that hurt to look at directly. The singularity hung in space for a moment, perfectly spherical and absolutely black. Then, with a flash of hawking radiation, it evaporated, taking the last remnants of the Krillian invasion force with it. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus. Lirelei threw her arms around him, not caring that he was covered in alien blood and glowing with residual dimensional energy. I thought you were dead. So did I, for a moment there. Marcus held her close, his body shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. But it appears reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Admiral Chen's voice cut through their reunion. Guardian, we're reading. Massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Hundreds of them. Marcus looked up at the tactical display, his expression grim. The rest of the Krillian fleet. They felt their advanced ship die, and they're coming to investigate. How long do we have? Perhaps 6 hours? Maybe less. Lirila pulled back to look at his face. Can you do it again? Create another singularity? Marcus shook his head. That trick only works once. They'll have adapted their bionuclear cores to prevent containment. And honestly, using Voidrend to warp reality on that scale, he held up the sword, and Lirelei could see that it's impossible. Blade was now shot through with hairline cracks. It's damaged. Maybe permanently. Then what do we do? Marcus looked around at the assembled fleet, hundreds of ships from dozens of species. many of them damaged from the battle, but all still ready to fight. Then he looked at Lirale, the woman who had taught him that even after billions of years of solitude, it was still possible to hope. "We do what the Guardians should have done from the beginning," he said quietly. "We trust others to carry the burden." Epilogue. The New Alliance *. 6 months after the Battle of Zephyria *, the Galactic Council. Chamber had been rebuilt to accommodate representatives from 43 different species, the largest gathering of conscious beings in recorded history. The circular chamber hummed with dozens of different languages, translated in real time by quantum computers that still couldn't quite grasp some of the more exotic forms of communication. At the center of it all, Marcus Thompson stood before the assembled delegates. He looked different now, older somehow, despite his impossible age. The weight of 14 billion years was finally showing in his eyes. "The Guardian Archive is complete," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Every piece of Guardian technology, every technique, every scrap of knowledge my people accumulated over eons of existence, all of it is now available to the Galactic Alliance." High Counselor Thalnus of the Altarian Republic rose from her crystalline seat. "Guardian Marcus, this gift is beyond measure. But are you certain this is wise? Such technology in the wrong hands?" "Could be catastrophic," Marcus agreed. "But keeping it in the hands of one being has already proven insufficient. The Krillians are still out there. We've destroyed perhaps 1% of their total force. They'll be back. And when they come, it won't be with a single hive ship." Admiral Chen, now wearing the insignia of the Alliance's Supreme Commander, activated a holographic display showing the galactic rim. "Our long-range sensors have detected massive movement in the dark regions beyond known space. Conservative estimates suggest over 10,000 Krillian vessels massing for what appears to be a coordinated assault." A ripple of unease passed through the assembled delegates. Even with Guardian technology, the scale of the threat was almost incomprehensible, which is why Marcus continued, "I'm formally dissolving the position of Guardian. From this day forward, the protection of conscious life is the responsibility of all conscious life. No single being, no matter how powerful, should carry that burden alone." Prime Node 7 of the Synthetic Collective projected its holographic form into the chamber. This unit has completed analysis of Guardian computational matrices. Distribution of knowledge has increased collective defensive capabilities by approximately 2,847%. Probability of successful resistance to Krillian incursion now stands at 67.3%. "Better odds than we had 6 months ago," muttered General Vorthan of the Draconian Defense Force. "But still not great. Which is why we're not just sharing technology," Marcus said. "We're sharing responsibility. Every species represented here has committed ships, personnel, and resources to the Alliance. For the first time in galactic history, we're truly united." President Martinez of the Terran Federation leaned forward. "Marcus, what about you? Will you stay with the Alliance?" Marcus glanced toward the observation gallery, where Lirale sat with the other royal observers. She smiled and nodded. They had discussed this moment many times. "I've been a soldier for 14 billion years, Marcus said quietly. "I think it's time I tried being just a man. And if the Krillians return, ask Captain Thesis, then we'll face them together. All of us. The way it should have been from the beginning." The formal session ended an hour later, but Marcus remained in the chamber long after the delegates had departed. He stood at the great viewport, looking out at the construction yards where the Alliance's new fleet was taking shape. Ships designed with Guardian technology, but built by dozens of different species, each contributing their own innovations and improvements. Impressive, isn't it? Lirale joined him at the viewport, slipping her hand into his. "Terrifying," Marcus admitted. "In 6 months, they've advanced beyond anything my people achieved in 1,000,000 years. The learning curve of collective intelligence is exponential. Having second thoughts about sharing the technology every day. But then I remember what the alternative looked like." Marcus squeezed her hand. "How are the integration programs progressing?" "Better than expected. The Nexus Collective's hive mind techniques are proving surprisingly compatible with Altarian meditation practices. And the TRANS. ... Lirale shook her head in amazement. They've somehow managed to weaponize synthetic computational matrices. Their new battle computers can process tactical data faster than organic minds can even perceive it. And the Draconians are building ships the size of small moons? I'm not sure if they missed the point of the technology sharing or understood it better than anyone else. Marcus laughed, a sound that would have been impossible for him just a year ago. Probably both. What about us? How is Zephyria adapting? We're focusing on the medical applications. Guardian biotechnology could extend lifespans across the galaxy, maybe even achieve true immortality for some species. Lirale paused. Speaking of which, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Oh, how long do you plan to stay married? To me? I mean, you're immortal, and I've got maybe another century if I'm lucky. Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Lirilla, in 14 billion years of existence, the 2 years I've been married to you represent the only time I've ever truly felt alive. If you'll have me, I'll spend whatever time you have left learning how to be worthy of that gift. And after that, I'll mourn you for however long it takes. And then maybe I'll try to find someone else who can teach me something new about being alive. Lirale smiled. I think I can live with that, so to speak. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the construction yards where humanity's future was taking shape. In the distance, Marcus could see the first of the new Guardian-class dreadnoughts, taking shape, massive vessels that combine the best of a dozen different technological traditions with Guardian enhancements that made them unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Do you think we'll win? Lirale asked. I think, Marcus said slowly, that for the first time in 14 billion years, the universe has a fighting chance. An alarm chimed softly through the chamber speakers, followed by Admiral Chen's voice. Guardian Marcus, Queen Lirale, please report to the command center. We're receiving something that you both need to see. They found Chen and her staff clustered around a communications console, their faces tense with excitement and worry in equal measure. What is it? Marcus asked. Long-range sensors picked up. This transmission about an hour ago, Chen explained. It's coming from beyond the galactic rim in the direction of the Krillian fleet concentration. Let's hear it. The speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice unlike anything they had heard before. It was cold, alien, but unmistakably conscious, and it was speaking in perfect galactic standard. Asterisk greetings, inhabitants of this galaxy. We are the Preservers, representatives of the Eternal Compact. We have been monitoring your conflict with the entity you call the Krillian Collective. Asterisk Marcus went rigid. That's impossible. Asterisk, we bring greetings from the Guardian survivors of the 7th universe, an offer of alliance against our common enemy. Asterisk survivors, Lirale breathed. But you said I said they died to hold reality together, Marcus whispered. I never said they stayed dead. As the transmission continued, Asterisk Guardian Marcus Thompson, last of the 6 cycle watchers, your actions have not gone unnoticed. The time for isolation has ended. We are coming. Asterisk, the message ended in a burst of static, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Well, Admiral Chen said finally, I guess the universe just got a lot more interesting. Marcus stared at the communications console, his mind reeling. After 14 billion years of believing he was alone, the possibility that other Guardians had somehow survived in a different universe, in a different cycle of existence, changed everything. When? He asked quietly. Chen checked her instruments. Based on the transmission delay, and assuming they're traveling at maximum Guardian velocity, approximately 6 months. It's the same time frame as the Krillian assault. Give or take a few weeks. Marcus looked around at the assembled staff beings from half a dozen species, who had learned to work together in ways that would have been impossible just a year ago. Then we'd better be ready for both of them. Outside the command center's viewports, the Alliance fleet continued to grow. Ships that incorporated Guardian technology with the innovations of 43 different species, crewed by beings who had chosen to stand together against the darkness. The next phase of the galactic war was about to begin. But for the first time in longer than memory, Marcus Thompson, last Guardian of the 6th universe, was not facing it alone.